We're up to the last line on the Amud on Peches Amud Beis. So we had two pshatim of how we know that a human is allowed to eat food when it's detached from the ground, and how an animal is allowed to eat food when it's attached to the ground. We had two pshatim. Now we have a third pshat how we know this. Ravina Omar, they don't even need a source. They don't need psukim. Right? That again, a person to eating detached produce and an animal eating attached. You're not allowed to muzzle a shor while it's threshing. Everything, meaning when it doesnn't say, it says loisachsim shor, but we know that shor is lav dafka. It means any animal. If you're using a lion, let's say, to do the threshing, you also can't muzzle the lion. And we know it from Shabbos, Rashi says. Anyway, so kol mili isnu b'chasim, the afina shor shami Shabbos. I mean, the Gemara says that, but Rashi explains that we're forced to say. Right? Why should it say loy sachsem shor b'disha? Right? Shor de kosa Rahman Lamali. Why did the Torah write shor? Lakushe chaysam lenechsam v'nechsam lechaysam. Right? It's to compare the one who muzzles to the muzzle, and the muzzle to the one who's muzzling. Right? So just like the chaysam, who's the human, he's allowed to eat from the fruit when it's attached to the ground. So too, the animal that gets muzzled could also eat when it's attached to the ground. And just like an animal that gets muzzled can eat when it's detached, so too the chaysam could eat betalosh. Yeah? Okay, so that's Ravina's pshat. Very simple.
What does it mean, like tzarech kra? I mean, the other two pshatim are also using one word that's extra to learn it out.
You don't need a separate pasuk.
The other ones were in a separate pasuk, reyacha, or what was the other one? Kisave, kama.
Yeah, but the reyacha and the kama, one of them was extra.
He's saying shire is extra.
What?
And he's saying shire is extra.
No, because shor you need it as part of the description. No?
No, because he could have said like Sadish Mechasima. So shire is an extra word, and he's learning using that to tell us this.
No.
So they're using.
But there you need to say some sort of animal. Just a matter of why you're saying shor dafka.
No, that was the whole thing. You don't need to say it. You could have just said like Sadish Mechasima.
I hear. Because I think the reyacha and kama is not okay. You want to get into whether it's Xera Shava? It is Xera Shava, but I hear. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, at least I think it's a good question. Yeah, fine. So Tanarabban. Now we have a bunch of drushes of what to learn out from Daesh. Daesh, which means to thresh, and this is talking about Daesh by when it says loisachsim. Yeah. So Daesh, ma Daesh miyuchid davar shegidule karka. So Daesh is something you thresh. You only thresh things that grow from the ground. It's a whole debate whether you say b'shas gemar malacha or not. We'll skip it. Upayel oichaboy, and the workers allowed to eat from it. So af kol shegidule karka payel oichaboy, and that meaning anything else that's gedule karka, the payel can eat it. Yatsa hachayla v'amachavetz v'magaven. that comes to exclude somebody who's milking or somebody who's making, I don't know exactly what mechavetz is, some sort of yogurt or cheese, but it can't be cheese because the next one is cheese. Or megaven, it's not gedule karka, and the poil is not allowed to eat from it. So the bottom line is if you're a worker who wants to eat while you're on the job, don't get a job making cheese or meat or anything like that because you're not allowed to eat it. Right? Only stuff around. What?
Can you eat if you work in all the other times you work with food, not being working in a field?
I always thought that if a guy works in a restaurant, he's allowed to eat. Right? That's what I thought.
That's what I thought also.
This Gemara is clearly not saying that.
Well, the Gemara, Yaakov, you're talking about Minhag Medina. We're talking about Stam. What's the Din Deraisis? That's the Stam Minhag Medina.
And a Chanami. But I don't know. I thought it was always al halacha.
Well, Minhag Medina is halacha also, no? I'm saying it's not a Din Deraisa, but it's halacha that Minhag Yakok and Minhag Medina.
I don't know. Is that the law in the Medina? Is that
well,
the law?
Why would I'm saying I think there's an idea that you should be feeding your workers at a restaurant, that they could get something from the restaurant.
Yeah.
Well, the minig is people who work in the food services industry, they count very much on eating. Guys have at least 2 meals a day, either morning, breakfast and lunch, or lunch and supper. That's very important.
Right, I mean, so
I worked in the hashkacha now, so yeah, it's very important to them. I also, the balabas he's a sweetheart, the balabas of this PKS, but that's not the point. The point is that people count on eating a few meals. Guys who work in hotels, restaurants, everything. Yeah.
So
I think also in a restaurant there's another thing. I think if someone's working b'gemar malach in a restaurant, that means he's cooking food. The owner of the head chef wants him to eat to make sure the food is good.
No, stop.
For this.
Stop. That has nothing to do with anything.
Well,
thank you, but it is. I'm saying you don't need this. You don't even need this to get there. The guy wants him to eat. This is if he doesn't want someone to eat. Is he allowed to stop him? That's what we're dealing with.
Yesterday, a guy who asked me, is that a chassan and the mashkiach, that he had no idea who they were, and the mashkiach told him he could eat. So he wanted to know if he could eat. Like, how much power does the mashkiach have?
Someone walked in, or someone was working there?
No, walked in, but the mashkiach told him he could eat. They wanted to know if that's. I should have told him.
Mashkiach think they're the boss.
Well, that could be. So I wanted to tell him, like, well, if you think the mashkiach doesn't have the right, then don't eat in that place, right? Because then he's full of baloney. I'm a mother show, right? Either way, okay. The top Tais is actually interesting because in Erevin, Tais brings the Gemara in Erevin that Balei Chaim are considered gedulei karka, because without karka they can't live because they need grass. I mean, all of us, I guess, right? Because you need grass and you need the karka. Tais, he just points that out. Tais, he doesn't bring more than that. But either way, so I don't know. Maybe I mean, why doesn't it bring meat? Why is it sticking only with milk products? And if you work for a butcher,
saying only on the threshing floor. That's why I'm asking.
No, I'm saying, but the Gemara says, but it comes to exclude milk and cheese products. Why don't you just say meat?
Isn't that edible right away?
I don't know. Could we say that maybe meat is gedule karka because lemais it's the actual animal, and mashen kain the milk is only a byproduct?
Maybe it's the other way around. It only works up until gemar malacha. After gemar malacha, no one can eat from this din. Once you have the meat, once the cow's been shechted and salted and everything else, that's the gemar malacha.
I don't know. Maybe.
Up until you have cheese, that's not the gemar malacha. You don't have a gemar malacha.
Right. I don't know. Didn't Rashi say basar? We had this in the Gemara, and Rashi. I thought Rashi said basar a couple of blot ago.
Milk you can drink right away. It's Gemara Malacha as soon as it comes out.
Right.
For that matter, eggs also, so but even though we didn't mention it here, but we've mentioned it before.
It doesn't say eggs here either. Because it gives three different types of cheeses. Right? Well, milk and cheese milk products, and nothing else. Okay, whatever.
Because all three of those are different gemar malacha. As Rachman said, until you milk it, once you milk it, it's milk.
Right.
But if you're making cheese, there's no gemar malacha by milking. So the next stage would be the chiddush.
No, I'm saying.
And then after mechavetz, you have megavin.
Right. Well, that's true. But you could bring other things too. Okay, whatever it is. Anyways, bye. To Lamali, so the word says Lamali. What I need it for? What I need it from the word dayish. Why don't I learn it from kisave b'kerem reyacha? It says when you come into the kerem, something that's only attached to the ground. What answers it's that since it says kama, which means the grain standing on the rabbis called bale kama. It's coming to include all bale kama. The rabbis name midi de lav gedule kakaninu. So maybe kama just means anything, which I'm not so sure what that means, but the Gemara is saying maybe we would think that kama means every last thing in the world, kamash malan. So dayish is telling us only things on the ground, and that's it.
We had a drush about the kama. The kama, the rabbis called bale kaiman, which includes animals.
You mean so? Okay, that's what you're thinking,
Well, we had that. That would be the havamina here.
right? I hear. I certainly didn't think that.
There, Shash discusses this that the Gemara over there has the word kaima, and over here the Gemara uses kama, and he says the Gemara is dafka use specific words in Bava Kama versus here to fit with the drushas.
Was it kaima? I guess it was kaima there.
Yeah, that's let me.
No, that's the same thing. That's what I'm saying. That's why the Gemara doesn't say kaima here. It's a havamina. There the drasha is kama the rabbis called bale kaima.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out the havamina. Right.
Well, it's still a potential havamina, but we don't want to end up with that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the Gemara doesn't bring the word kaima at all, so you won't ask. Okay, so what happened?
Okay, I hear. Okay, so let's see. Back to Tani Idach, Daesh, another one. Daesh, man, Daesh, that Daesh is that at the Gemar Malacha, that's when the worker eats it. So too, anything that's at the Gemar Malacha, the Poil eats it. That comes to exclude somebody who's taking out the weeds of garlic and onions, and it's meaning, and I don't know why it has to be garlic and onions. So then, since it's not the gemar malacha, the pile is not eat from them. Meaning, because here he's picking stuff from the weeds, whatever. He's taking out the weeds, so that's not a gemar malacha. So Gemara says, "Lamali may el kalyuch may el kalyuch alosita nafka." That we can learn out that you don't put it into. If you don't put it, you're not allowed to put it into a kli, right? Which is meaning that when they're harvesting, and here he's not harvesting, here he's just weeding. So Gemara says, even though he's taking out the small, what do you call it? Onions and garlics that are not going to grow, meaning, but they're edible. So he's not just taking out weeds; he's taking out the shvacha pieces of garlic, which he is able to eat. So Mamela, it doesn't. You can't learn that from El Kel Yichol Sitain, right? That you would need the pasuk of Daesh, the word of Daesh to tell you. All right, because again, since he has the possibility of putting into a kli, so memela that would be considered in part of El Kel Yichol Sitain, right? Which means that he would be able to eat it as long as he doesn't put it to a kli. So that's what we're saying. That's when we need Daesh. Fine. Tani idach. Daesh, ma daesh miyuchid davar shalom nigmar malachte lemaiser payal oichaboy. So daesh is miyuchid that it's something it's not done yet, because after daesh, after being dash, you have to do you still have to do zoyra and all the rest of the steps. So so anything that's not complete, the pile is allowed to eat from it. That comes to exclude somebody who's separating dates and figs, which Rashi says they're attached together, and you have to take like a metal magrefa. You have to take like a metal utensil to break them up. However, since it's considered gemar malacha, meaning it's considered done, and therefore you have to. The pile can't eat from it. So, we have a brisa that says that a worker that is separating these dried figs is allowed to eat from it. That's talking about grapes that are not ripe yet. So since they're not ripe, they're not yet chayiv in the trumas and maasros. Right? Meaning they're put away so that they should become ripe. So therefore they're not chayiv in trumas and maasros. Fine, Tani Yidach. This is a fourth limud from Daesh, meaning these brises are all saying different pshatim from the word Daesh. We can't learn out all these drushes from one word. It's just different brises learning darshan on the same word. I'm sorry, Tani Yidach. Daesh, ma Daesh miyuchad davar shalei nigram malachta the chala upayel oichava. So Daesh, when it's being threshed, it's a miyuchad that it's not considered nigmar malacha for chala, or payal and the payal can't eat from it. Meaning, hafrashas chala. So when do you need to do hafrashas chala? So that's once it becomes a dough. There's a whole diyun in the paiskim, really in Shulchan Aruch. It's right when you put the water into the flour. You don't have to wait for it to become dough. Once it becomes a mixture, but it seems like the minig has become that you wait for it to become dough.
People eat. People eat raw grain. I mean, I don't understand the America. I'm not a farm boy. I understand you eat grapes when you pick them. You eat wheat when you pick it. When after you thresh it, it's still just raw, whatever it is.
What do you mean? It's
a gemar malacha, but do people eat it then because it's gemar malacha? What does that mean?
Well,
who eats raw wheat or raw barley?
No, but it's that stage is complete.
Okay, fine. So I'm right to
that. They roast it. Kali v'karmel.
When you thresh it, you're not roasting it.
You can't eat it raw, is what he's saying.
When you thresh it, you're not roasting it.
No, but they can take some, roast it, and eat it for lunch.
Morris says you can eat it when you thresh it because it's kamar malacha. No, people don't eat raw grain. Animals might, people don't.
Right.
That's what people invented. People invented fire. Is you could have pizza, not to eat raw dough.
It's considered. I don't know if it's you mean.
We had this question in brachos, in Ketab Mevarachim, on a grain of wheat, what bracha you make on it. Obviously, it's an achila. Obviously, it's an achila. It may not be a mezainas, but it's still an achila. If it wasn't an achila, it was nothing to talk about.
Actually, grain is the adama, not mezainas. Cooked grain is the adama. If it's not processed, it's an adama. Even if.
Well, but the point is, it's still an achila.
Of course, you're right, but I don't know about raw grain. That might be like idea chak. I don't know. That might be still.
Well, that's what threshing is. Yeah. It's raw.
Yeah, right. I'm saying, but when the Shulchan Aruch talks about raw. They don't mean raw like you're saying. They mean like Gershon's saying that they did something to it. They still cooked it. It's just in a grain form, not in a processed ground up form.
Why do you say that? Why are you forced to say that?
Because just raw
you ever
products.
go
If
out to a
it's,
field and try to eat a piece of raw grain?
I
If
don't
he
know.
didn't, so I didn't. But I'm saying, but I'm just saying that if how do we just make an assumption like that?
I'm just saying, not everything in a raw form can you make a bracha.
That's true. It has to be.
Certain things can be eaten raw. Not every single product can be eaten raw.
Can you
Things
eat
that
a raw egg? Can you eat a raw egg?
I don't know if you make a bracha on a raw egg.
Absolutely.
Raw egg is 100%
It's
edible. Okay,
debatable.
it's your noig one way, but that because your noig one way, that everything has to be cooked doesn't mean that that's any other way is not edible. You know?
I understand, but in halacha, it's not so simple that everything gets a bracha, even if you eat it raw. Just because you eat it raw doesn't mean it's something that's considered edible in halacha when it comes to brachas.
Yeah.
We had this with Sion a couple of months ago, and then he ate a raw egg in front of us.
It was years ago. It was a lot of years ago.
Wow. Okay.
I know you're still jet lagged, so we let you off on that. But it was at least 10 years ago.
Okay.
The only reason
right.
we don't eat raw eggs is because of a chashash for salmonella. In Japan, there's no chashash. They eat raw eggs all the time.
No, Jesse was talking about we had in the Shabbos afternoon, we're learning Hilchos Muktzah. So we're talking about whether an egg is Muktzah or not. So yeah, you don't eat a raw egg. So Tzion got up and said, "I eat a raw egg," and he went in the kitchen, got a raw egg for my mother, cracked it, and drank it. That's the story. But
anyone ever eat mayonnaise or chocolate mousse? It's full of raw eggs.
I hear.
Half
Anyway,
the dips you eat have raw eggs in them.
All right, whatever it is, let's go back because I'm going to miss all the Birchas Kriya Shema by Meir if we don't.
I just can't. I gained a pound as soon as he said chocolate mousse.
I hear you. Anyways, so the Gemara is saying that it's not nigmar malacha for challah, right? Lost the place again. Tani either dosh ma dayish. I'm sorry, ma dayish miyochad davar shaloi nigmar malacha lechallah upayal echaboy. It has gemar malacha, but not for challah because it wasn't yet made into dough. Af kol davar shaloi nigmar malacha lechallah payal echaboy. Yotza halosh v'makatev v'oifa. What it's excluding is somebody who kneads the dough and who shapes the dough, mekatev, or forms it, v'oifa, and who bakes it. Shenigmar malachta l'chala. That's doing the gemar malach of chala. The ain poil oichabay, that the poil's not allowed to eat it. Meaning, so the baker, once it's made into chala, once it's made into dough, then he's not allowed to eat it. So the kasha that Tosfos asks, what is the Gemara saying for ha'oifa? You're not supposed to take challah. You don't take challah when you take it way before oifa, right? So you have to say a chiddush, right? Yeah.
Not an Eretz Yisrael.
Well, no. Besides the forgetting on Shabbos, no. It's time. I mean, all the time, women forget to take off challah. Even they remember before Shabbos. You still take it off after it's baked, but it's not lechatchila. Not lechatchila. Okay, whatever it is. So that's this fourth way of learning Daesh. When it says v'aloi nigmar malachta l'maisa, but it has gemar malacha for maisa, right? Even before you take off, even before you the kneading and the baking, it's already chayiv and maisa. In which case, we know from before that if it's not chayiv and maisa, well, I mean, once it's chayiv and maisa, the worker can't eat. Like kasha b'chutz la'aretz askin deleka meiser. So man chutz la'aretz where there's no meiser. So memela, that's why there was no gemar malacha for meiser. So when it says ihachi chala nami lekem, so chala also we don't have. Right now, chala means midaraisa. We do have chala in Arab Eretz Yisrael midrabana. Right, so that's another one that. All these people think they're doing this grace and mitzvah, Rosh Chala, the rice, and no, sorry. And then the women get all stressed out that you tell them, don't make a bracha, take off the challah, don't make a bracha. And they think they're not doing the mitzvah at all. The reason why they don't make a bracha is the Savik the Rabbana. I mean, whatever. Either way, Sava Bracha is lahakol. But even so, it's a mitzvah derabanan. It's not a mitzvah deraisa. Right? Okay. So then chala also lekos. So one answers elolaylam be'eretz. It's talking about in Eretz Yisrael. But like kasha, see here, this is like this is a riot to the Israelis. They say ba'aretz. They don't say Eretz Yisrael ba'aretz. Right? The Gemara also says ba'aretz. It didn't say Eretz Yisrael. Right? So like kasha,
Right for Israelis, these are people who lived in Bava.
That's right. Yeah. So they said, like kasha, b'sheva shekivshu, b'sheva shechilku. Right? There were 7 years that they were kovish Eretz Yisrael, and there they had to keep challah, but they weren't yet chayiv in chumas and maises. And then the next 7 years after they gave it out, then they were. Damar mar sheva shekivshu. The 7 years that they conquered it, so b'sheva shechilku. Is chayiv b'chala, but no is chayiv b'maiser. The chayiv in chala and not in maiser. So Gemara says, "Midi maiser kagarim, kamar malacha kagarim." Why? Where are you getting that maiser is what causes the workers not to be able to eat? Gemar malachas kagarim. Right now, you can already say, "What do you mean?" We did say gemar malacha. I mean, we did say chiyav and maiser. That's because it's a gemar malacha, meaning there's no separate din that when it becomes chayav and meiser, then the workers can't eat. No, when Tosfos points this out, I think that's what Tosfos means, right? It's pshat is that when there's a gemar malacha, that's when you're chayav in chumas and meises, right? Anyway, so that's the Gemara's kasha. Elam Ravina, so Ravina says different pshat. Korach v'tani. Daesh, we're going to take the last 2 ways of learning Daesh and combine them. Daesh, ma Daesh, meyuchad davar shaloi nigram malachtoi lemaiser uluchalu poyaloi chaboy. Daesh is meyuchad that doesn't have gemar malacha for meiser and for chala, and a worker can eat it. Avkol shaloi nigram malachtoi lemaiser uluchalu poyaloi chaboy. So it has to be a combination of both. It's not chayiv in meiser and it's not chayiv in chala. Fine. Okay, so that's the 5 drushes that we learn out from the word daesh. Basically, all saying the same. I don't know if they're saying the exact same thing, but they're basically saying that kolzman, that it's considered temporary, the workers are allowed to eat. Once it becomes more permanent and the malach is done, the workers can no longer eat. That's the gist of the Yisoid from Amud Aleph. Fine. Now Yiboilu, interesting child. So we said, was it yesterday's daf or 2 days ago's daf, that so the worker's allowed to eat the fruit, but he can't start flavoring it. Like he can't bring his ketchup, the equivalent of his ketchup. Right? We said salt. That he's not allowed to dip it in salt because then he's going to want more and more fruit. Meaning you have to be fair about this. Right? You're hungry, so you take a little bit to satiate yourself, but you can't start making a big party. So now the Gemara is saying, the Gemara asks, fine. So let's say you don't bring any condiments, as we'd call it. Right? But what about if you just roast it to make it taste gishmak? So then
you have to eat this. You're eating this standing up.
Did we see that you have to be standing?
Yeah, while he's standing in the trees, davening Shemoneh Esrei.
No, I'm asking something. He's not sitting down with a plate, so he's doing this in the field standing up. Right?
He's doing this in the field. I don't. Pashtus is he's standing up, yeah. But I don't know. He can't sit down.
I don't know. Can he?
I don't know. Maybe. I could hear what you're saying.
He can't add ketchup, but he can sit down. I'm asking. I don't know.
No, because adding ketchup means you're making it into a ganze deal.
Maybe sitting down is also.
What?
No,
I don't know.
If he's picking potatoes, you don't pick potatoes when you're standing up. How do you, unless you have 6 foot arms, I mean, how do you pick potatoes?
No. You're saying, David, maybe if you sit down, you'll end up eating more because you're not in a rush. That was what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes.
I hear.
Because now he's enjoying himself. He's taking his time. He's enjoying himself.
Okay,
He's also not in a rush now to get back to work because he's sitting down and enjoying himself.
I hear. Maybe with the Gemara's teretz would answer your part of the shaila. Okay, but the Gemara, meanwhile, is going off of that you can't add condiments or whatever. But what about just roasting it? Can he roast it and eat it? Is that like a novim and something else, or meaning a novim and davar acher? Meaning is that like adding another ingredient to it? It'll get clear on them in base, or is that just if it's adding an ingredient to it, then you're not allowed to roast it because it's going to make it taste better. You're going to eat more, right? Or we say no, it's the same thing. It's just now it's roasted, so it's not. But it's not like adding another ingredient. So Toshima Rishoy Balabayas. This mission is interesting because this shows you the labor. They must have had labor. What's it called? Wars, labor and management wars. That we say, like whatever those back and forth. Look what these guys are scamming, trying to out scam each other here. Rishoy Balabayas lahashkus poilim yayin. A Balabayas can give his workers as much wine to drink, because when you drink a lot of wine, it fills you up, right? And therefore, they're not going to end up eating any of the grapes because they're so full from the wine. So he's scamming them. He's giving them free drinks.
Wine is not more expensive than grapes?
I guess for this guy, he must have had a lot of wine. He must have had a lot of wine, so it wasn't worth it for him to lose the grapes. I don't know. I guess in that particular situation. But he's pulling a scam on them, and they can pull a scam on him. And Rishayim Poilin, Latavo Pitam Betzir, they're allowed to dip their bread, not their grapes. Grapes we know they're not allowed to put into anything. But they could take their bread and put it into tzir, so that they'll what's it called? An appetizer. As an appetizer, so that now they'll eat more grapes of their boss. It doesn't sound like there was much love lost between these two, right? So, anyways, so what do you see? That you're allowed to do something, meaning you're allowed to dip your bread because you're not doing anything to the grapes. So the same thing here, you're not doing anything you're not adding anything at least to the grain. So Gemara on Dama Bey says, "Achshure legavra loikabibayla." To be masher the person, that's not a question. That's for sure mutter, which would David answer your shaila, right? Meaning a person to make him to give him appetizers. That's not. You can't. What are you going to do? You can't tell a worker what his diet should be before he comes to work, so he doesn't eat more things. So the same thing, I would think he could sit down. You can't tell a guy how to behave in that way. The question is about the fruit. So what's the din? A worker is allowed to eat the grapes on the top of the row that they go up and down the rows. So the grapes on the end of the row, which had a lot more sun, are a lot tastier. So you think that the boss can tell them, if you want to eat grapes, don't eat grapes from the end of the row. Those are the good grapes. But no, they're allowed to. You have a as long as they don't. Literally means to singe them in fire, as long as they don't roast them. So you see that you are allowed to roast them. The worker can roast them. The answer is no. Hassam. I'm sorry, the words you're not allowed to roast them. So you see that you're not allowed to roast. You're not allowed to roast the grain or anything. And my answer is no. Hassam mashum bitul malacha. There, the reason why they can't roast them is because they're supposed to be working. They're not supposed to be hanging out by the roasting machine. Let's say he has his wife and his kids with him, and he throws them the grape and says, "Hey, roast this for me. I can't do it because I'm working. But roast it for me." Fine. So therefore, it's no raya. It's another raya. Toshima lo yahav ba'or. You can't singe them in fire, but yoichel and eat it. But lo yichmor ba'adama, but yoichel, and you can't bury it in the ground. Meaning the way they used the ground back then for two things. They would heat things like the Gemara and Shabbos, like the Mishnah and Shabbos, that you could heat up. You're not allowed to heat up from the sand on Shabbos. And like we learned on Amar Aleph, no, not on Amar Aleph, we learned in Mishnah's Klayim that you can put into the ground in order to preserve it because it's cool. So you're not allowed to, the workers are not allowed to burn it. Not allowed to heat it up in the dirt. And they can't smash it on top of a rock, and eat it. But they are allowed to crush it in their hands and eat it, even though it's going to make it a little tastier. So you see that they're not allowed to burn it in the fire. So we're saying again, there, it's because of bitul malacha. the Gemara says Hachanamim Stavra, and that makes sense. Because if you think that the reason why they're not allowed to do these things is because it's going to make the pera sweeter, and then in the mail they're going to eat more of the owner's grapes. What kind of sweetening of a fruit do you get when you smash it against the rock? My answer is not possible that it's not going to become a little sweet, right? From the rock. I don't know, whoever's into fruit can try and figure that out. But why exactly it's going to make it sweet? I'm
like
assuming
a bruise on an apple, for example, is when it drops on and hits a rock or something. The bruise is when the sugars come to the surface. That makes it a lot sweeter.
Nobody wants. That's the part I don't like. I don't know why. It doesn't
Yeah,
taste
it's the part
sweeter.
that most people don't like, but it is sweeter.
Oh.
It loses the time of the apple, and
takes
it's
out
just
the
more
stuff on
sugar.
the inside.
So I hear what Gershom's saying. That smashing it itself, it changes its Metzias. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a changing in the Metzias.
Well, it's not the rock that's giving it the time. I cracked a nut on my granite countertop. Now it tastes like granite. I mean, the granite didn't add anything to it. It's the mice of breaking it that changes it.
Yeah. Okay, whatever it is, whatever makes it sweet, fine. So Tashima. So you have workers who were digging with ta'anim, with figs, the goydrim b'tmarim, and they were working with dates, ubaytrim ba'navim, and they were gathering. I'm sorry, tamarim is what did I say? Tamarim is dates. Baytrim ba'navim is with grapes. Maiskim b'zeis, and Rashi points out that these are all descriptions of how you work with each particular thing. Each one has its own name, but they all mean the same thing.
It's all harvesting.
It's all harvesting. It's all harvesting, but each one has its own name. Avada. Why not? Makes the teachers have more confusing questions to ask the kids on the tests. I haven't brought that up in a while, so it's the end of the school year. So yeah. So Hare Elu, all of these Eichlinu Paturim, you can eat. They could eat from them, meaning the workers could eat, and they're potter. Sha'atayra zichsa lahem, because the Torah was mazaket for them. Like we said, that until they're bought, it's not considered that's chayv and shuvas and ma'asos, right? But pisam lo yochlu, but they're not allowed to eat it with bread. Elim kain not l'rishus b'balabayis, unless they take rishus from the balabayis to do that, right? Which again, it's weird to understand, because they're gonna end up eating more if they eat bread. Wouldn't they get fuller if they eat bread? L'chayra, unless it tasted so much better, they end up taking doubles. That's what you have to say. They end up taking doubles. But lo yispos b'melach v'yochel, and also you're not allowed to dip it into salt and eat it. Like that, we already learned. So what do you see from this? What? No, so you see from this that
Gershon, like they said, this was Bavel, so these honey bavloy tip shoy. These guys are making bread sandwiches. I'm eating a lot of bread.
I was just gonna say, it's like in restaurants in America, they give you bread at the beginning of the meal. Why? Because after you eat carbs, there's a high, and you want to eat more sweets. About 60 minutes to 90 minutes later.
You want
the
dessert?
Science is exactly. They want you to buy dessert, so they give you bread at the beginning. So by the time you finish the suda, now I want something sweet again.
That's why they're giving you bread at the beginning?
Yep. I just read something like this about this yesterday.
I thought it was so you can wash and make hamotzi.
That's the Jewish reason, but the psychology of it is because they want you to buy dessert too.
What else are they supposed to give bread? Who figured that out? All right.
Guys all in restaurants figured it out.
I guess so. I guess.
Mishnah,
They-
guy Michelin, he
they-
doesn't just make ties or Yaakov. We figured this out a long time ago.
I guess.
All businesses pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to psychologists to figure these things out.
Yeah. There's a big Israeli one. He was very. There was a guy who was Israeli. He was very. Fascinating books. I never got through them.
Yaakov, in the case where he
Yeah.
gives you permission to eat it with your bread, would that be considered lekeach, buying it, and you'd be mechayiv meiser at that point?
Why should it be?
Because the Torah wasn't zichzaleh.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but now because it's a bonus. I hear
Wait,
that.
can you repeat the question, Akiva? What do you ask?
Saying that should be considered a lakicha now.
Rashi says, "Upetur memaisav le'er mekachlu fi she'ein zet tanai schar and el Torah zichzaleh." Rashi's mashma, if the Torah wasn't mezakeh to you, that's tanai schar, and that would be a din of lekicha.
Right.
Yeah, but even the pitam, it's not tnai scharim. Yes, Rishus lebal bayis because of the eating.
The Torah is not mezakeh. That's what the Gemara is mashma. Anything that's not mezakeh should have a din meiser on it.
Well, 1 second. It's stam if the balabas and it's out in the field. You're saying that's gonna the Torah's gonna be mechayiv it? I don't hear that.
Why wouldn't it have a din lekicha? It's mashma. It's only because the Torah is mezakeh to you that we don't consider it tanai schar when it's not mechayiv meiser.
Right. Okay, I hear that. Anyway, so I don't know. You're checking the Rambam or the Choshen Mishpah. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, so when it says Mela Vade Kanovim B'Davar Acher Domi, so saying it's not a proof because salting grapes is considered a condiment. That's what I'm calling it, right? That's for sure because it's an independent entity that you cannot prove from that. You can't salt the grape. That you can't go roast something because the roasted thing, it's the same exact food. You just happen to have roasted it, right? And it's not like adding salt. So the Gemara says, the Gemara asks, right? And we're saying that he's not allowed to dip it into salt and eat it. If somebody rents out a worker, so now here we're going to see how it depends on what the worker was hired for. So he hired the worker to either cover over the roots, or to do hoeing under olives. He's not allowed to eat because he's not working with the food. He's just doing yard work, as they say. Schare livtzar, if he rented him out to gather, schare limsoik, schare lulaket. Again, those are three different. It all just means harvesting. Hareza oichelu potter. He's allowed to eat, and he's potter from chumas amaisus. Shatar zichsa lahen, because that's what the Torah was mezakin for him. That's part of his salary that he could eat. Kotzas achas va'achas yoichel. If he made a katzitza, meaning he made a deal to eat, so then he could eat one at a time. All right. Shtayim loyach, but he's not allowed to eat two at a time. And so now here's what Akiva was saying. Since he's allowed to eat, he made a deal, so now he's considered like a lekeah. So therefore, once he eats two is considered like a lekicha, and he would be chayav and chumas and maises. The savis melech v'yochel, and then he's allowed to dip it into salt, and he's allowed to eat it. Right? So the Gemara says, "Hey, what is this going on that he's allowed to dip it into salt?" He was going on the seifa. Even the kotzatz kol heichi the ba'i leichel, since he made up with the owner that the owner's letting him eat, and this is coming from the owner's, either he needs to give it to him in order to maintain him, or he's giving them because he's given to him as a prize or whatever it is. But he could do whatever he wants. He could dip it into salt. Elalav aresha must be going on the resha, right, where he's only eating what the Torah entitles him to eat, and you see that he's allowed to put it into salt. So we have a stira, meaning can the worker put it into salt or not? Again, one is talking about Eretz Yisrael, and one is talking about Chutz La'aretz. Be'eretz kava svisa. In Eretz Yisrael, dipping food into salt will make it be kaveya for chumas and ma'aser, so the guy can't eat it anymore. The Chutz La'aretz like kava svisa, but in Chutz La'aretz, which is much more kal, obviously, than Eretz Yisrael, so then it's not going to be kaveya. So the Gemara asks, Amarava, mi ika midi, the Beretz Kava Svisa midaraisa. Are you going to say, is it possible to say that in Eretz Yisrael, dipping it into salt makes it now chayav and ma'aser? Ubechutz la'aretz loy kava svisa mutar lechatchila, and in chutz la'aretz it's not kaveya svisa, and it's mutar lechatchila. So Rashi says that what the kasha is, the kol the tikkun rabbanon came the raisa tikkun, meaning the whole taking off the chumas and ma'aser and chutz la'aretz as is a derabbanon. It's styled after a deraisa, right? So then, how can you say that they have different qualifications? That dipping into salt is not going to be kaveya. So Elamar Rava has a different shot. Bein baratz, bein chutz la'aretz, whether in Eretz Yisrael or in chutz la'aretz, chad lo kavas svisa. Dipping in the salt is not kaveya for one. Tarti kavas svisa, but two is kaveya svisa, because you have two dip, that's already too much, and it's chayav shumas amas kotzatz. If they make a deal, bein safas or bein loy safas, whether he dipped it, whether he didn't dip it, achas oichel, he's allowed to eat one by one. Shtayim loy yoichel, he can't eat two by two. Loy kotzatz or loy safas, if he didn't make a deal of, and he didn't dip it, oichel shtayim, then he's allowed to eat two, right? Because he's just going with what the Torah lets him do. Safas, but if he dips it, achas oichel, he can eat one at a time. Shtayim lo yoichel, two, he can't eat at a time. Bava the nota rishus mi balabayis, and even if he took rishus from the balabayis, the itvil lahu lemaisa v'kavas visa, because once you have two and you're dipping it, then it's going to be kaveya, and the dipping is kaveya. So basically, you have a whole set of rules of exactly a whole technical set of rules of exactly when it's kaveya, when it's not kaveya. So basically, so the teretz is, so when the first price is said that you're not allowed to dip it into salt, right? So that's talking about a worker who's regular worker through what the Torah lets him do, and he's allowed to eat. We said he's allowed to eat even two fruits, right? But he's not allowed to salt those two fruits because that's going to be mechayev and meisim, right? So memela, that's so one price is talking about two fruits, one price is talking about one fruit, and then we have no steer. Okay, if the tarti the cover svisa minol, and how do you know that dipping two makes it chayev? Amar Masna Dama Kra, very interesting how we learned it out from. It's a pasuk in Micha. It says ki kiptzam ke'amir garno. This is talking about when he's going to gather all of the goyim, like amir, like grain, like from the goyim. He's going to bring it to Yerushalayim. They're coming there, and they're going under the premise that they're going to attack the Yidden, right? So that now, but then the Yidden have them all in the same spot, and the Yidden will be able to get the goyim, right? So what do you see? Goyren is it's referring to something as a minimum. It means a gathering. So in a gathering, you need at least two of something in order to gather. Okay, we'll stop over here. A little technical, but fine.
Amir